Hi, I'm here with Rod Bremby, the Secretary of the Kansas Department of Health and the Environment. Rod's pretty well known in our community. Last year there was a decision in Kansas to block an air quality permit for a couple of coal plants based on global warming pollution, based on CO2 pollution, which was a first as far as I know. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, do you know of a state official since then who has made an air quality ruling on the same basis, or is it still the only of its kind?
I think it's still only one of its kind because in most states they have a public utilities commission or there's a board. Other states also don't provide as much authority to the secretary as Kansas does or did, and so far it's still the same ruling.
And last year saw a whole flurry of fights over this.
Right.
There were bills passed and vetoes, and more bills passed and more vetoes. Can you tell us briefly where that fight stands?
Sure. Last year, the Kansas legislature reacted to the decision by attempting to pass three pieces of legislation concurrently to override the veto, as well as to put in some environmental protection measures, albeit they were pretty light. The governor rejected those with a veto three times. Twice the vetoes were overridden. But while they were moving in the legislative area, the company also sued the state in the state court. They also filed an appeal through the appellate process. And so just yesterday we were sued in federal court for the same issue. So we think there's still going to be a legal battle per se, but we don't think that the Kansas legislature will stay stuck in the rut. We think that the state will move on and begin to look forward to a comprehensive energy policy, and I think we'll begin to focus on what's important for all Kansans rather than 1,400 megawatt construction facility, coal-fired facility for 400,000 customers and principally from Colorado.
So you think the legislative battle is largely over?
You know, we would hope so. There may be some folks who think that give it another shot, but we really think that with three processes moving in tandem, that we might have turned the corner. There's the Kansas Energy Council who's looking at some energy policy. We have a governor's Kansas Energy and Environmental Policy Advisory Group that's looking at climate change. And then we have a joint legislative committee that's looking at some comprehensive energy legislation. So with those three groups, we hope that the body of the legislature will look at some options and choose ones that make sense for all Kansans rather than get stuck in, what happened last year.
Do you think that whatever comes out of those processes, or do you hope that whatever comes out of those processes will serve to effectively block the construction of dirty coal plants in Kansas in perpetuity?
Well, we hope that the choices that Kansans make, the Kansas legislature will be a comprehensive energy policy that will move us forward into the 21st century. We have an abundance of wind out in Kansas. We know that our need is about 200 megawatts. We believe that efficiency and conservation, we don't need to build new powered facilities, but should we do that? I mean, we're talking 10 to 15 years down the road. So by then, we may have new technology, we may have found a way to harness some of the variable energy. So it's not a foregone conclusion that we really need to go after and achieve the same solution that was positive last year. So I don't think so.
Sorry to interrupt. Doors are open, and we're going to start exactly at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
There was a big decision last year there was, of course, the big court, the Supreme Court case, Mass versus EPA, which said that the EPA has the power to regulate CO2, and then there was this ruling by the appeals board a couple of days ago. Are those decisions related in some way to what you did, or are they complementary?
No, they're absolutely related. In fact, the foundation of the decision we made in Kansas was based upon the U.S. versus Mass versus EPA Supreme Court decision, where CO2 was a defined pollutant under the Clean Air Act. Before, the EPA thought that perhaps it wasn't, and that they didn't have the ability to regulate. The Supreme Court said that they did, and then with the latest, I think it's Region 8, the Denver office of the EPA again argued that they didn't have the ability to regulate the Bonanza permit, and the appeals board said, yeah, you do. You have that discretion. So I think the EPA is going to have to step up and make some decisions. We believe that we've been able to find a rationale, a basis for not allowing the construction of the facilities because we think it represents a substantial endangerment. And so now the EPA is back to square one, I think. Also down in Georgia, there was a district court judge who also ruled that the permit would not stand on the basis of CO2 issues. So.
And one of the big questions next year is whether the carbon program from the Obama administration will be run out of the EPA via this regulation, or whether it will be a legislative solution, a cap and trade program. Do you have an opinion on that, or a preference, or do you think it'll work better one way or the other?
I know that there's a lot of energy going into the conversation. I know people are thinking about the best path and the most expedient path. So I don't really have a personal preference. All I know is that I believe that this administration will move very quickly and very forcefully in trying to establish a national standard so that we can all begin to move down this energy pathway to the 21st century. We've got to be lean, we've got to be clean, we've got to be green. And so I'm optimistic that we'll get there.
And Kansas public opinion, over the course of the past 2 years, which has seen a lot of hubbub, have you seen public opinion shift, or where do you think it stands now on this?
Well, Kansans who are communicating about the issue feel strongly in support of the decision that we made. Kansans who are told about the issue typically are in opposition to it until we explain to them that we're only talking 200 megawatts out of 1,400. We're not talking about energy at 8 cents per kilowatt. It's going to be much higher than that. When they learn that 3 cents per kilowatt energy or efficiency and conservation is the cheapest form of energy we can come by, it begins to change the conversation. So Kansans are very supportive when they're knowledgeable about the choices.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking